Hello, everyone, and welcome to Threats to Publishers, Malvertising and Bad Ads. I am Rosemary Cipriano from Human, and I am so excited to be joined by two extremely smart people, Geoff and Mo. Geoff, Mo, would love you guys to introduce yourselves to everyone watching. Tell us a bit about yourself, where you work, what you do, what your interests are, and of course, in natural human fashion, what is your favorite robot? Can't do a single one of these without asking. So, Mo, let's start with you.
Thanks, Rosemary. I am senior analyst covering ad tech at Forrester. So that's the entire kind of programmatic space, DSPs, SSPs, and all of the kind of vendor and softwares and technologies that go into like making that work in real time, including ad security and ad fraud. And I've been in ad tech for about 20-ish years, the first 10 pretty much on the buy side, and then the most recent 10 a lot more focused, I think, on the sell side and publisher than I was at first. And it's been really eye-opening, just the scale, the problems, the things that we think about. And it's a lot more connected, to where people are and spend their time, right? I guess, I feel so uninspired to be saying it, but it's shocking that like 3 years later, my answer would be the same because the same like Roomba that I said was my favorite robot is still trucking along like 200,000 square feet of vacuuming later. I mean, who can complain? I owe it to the Roomba to cite it as the best robot in my life. Yeah.
Look, that's a great favorite robot, and honestly, it's most people's favorite robot at this
Yeah.
point, I feel like, especially after work from home. So awesome. Thank you, Mo. Geoff, what about you?
Hey everyone, Geoff Stupay. Have a pretty long background in the ad tech space. Been working in this probably over 10 years. Done a number of different things, specifically, focused on publishers. So both publisher monetization, co-founded a company to address malvertising specifically. And so obviously this conversation, malvertising, the threats that we see to publishers is near and dear to my heart. But right now I am VP of product for the human media side, and I cover both the IVT side as well as malvertising and other areas. In terms of favorite robot, I have a bunch of little boys at home, and I interact pretty frequently with the Transformers. And I think that the one that I see the most is Bumblebee. So I'm going to have to say Bumblebee just because, I probably see that guy daily.
Oh, that's awesome. Bumblebee is also a classic example. So thank you so much. I also see Transformers constantly, but not because I have kids, but because my fiance is obsessed with toys.
Hey, big kids and little kids.
Well, truly. No age limit to Transformers. So let's get into why we're here today. We're here to dive into the threats publishers need to know about, should know about, and how the whole programmatic ecosystem can help fight back. With emerging technologies like generative AI, buzzword, fraudsters are gaining tools in their toolbox just as much as the rest of us are. So let's lay the groundwork here. Mo, I know you recently put out a report, Bad Ads, all the ways ads misbehave and how to stop them. What in your book counts as a bad ad?
Yeah, so kind of ranges, I think on the sort of benign side, it's like a heavy ad. It's just so slow that it doesn't make the page load on time. Everyone's had that experience of I'm in the middle of reading an article and then it immediately scrolls down as soon as an ad that was way past where I scrolled has now loaded. And so that's I think the most benign side. And then there's truly sort of malicious ads, which have, either they've been hijacked, they're sending you to a malicious landing page, they're spoofing a brand or a likeness of somebody that you know, or even just straight up installing malware on your device, which I think is probably some of the worst kinds of bad ads that are just 0-day hacks.
Right. So I guess, Geoff, how do bad ads and malvertising impact publishers?
I think in a number of different ways. The key ways is really just eroding their users' trust and just degrading the overall user experience on their site and the way that folks interact with them. There's a number of other impacts beyond that. We know that browsers and search engines specifically penalize publishers who have excessive malware, excessive ads, and bad ad experiences. So it's definitely a risk to publishers to make sure that this is something that is protected within their environment. Additionally, it's damaging towards their relationship and their reputation with legitimate advertisers. So, obviously, as a publisher, one of your main concerns is ensuring that you have the deepest demand stack that you can and that you are very attractive to advertisers. Well, if advertisers know that their legitimate ads are running alongside malicious ones, it definitely goes into their calculus in terms of them wanting to spend in your environment. So, and really along that same topic, like the ways that they see this is, through engagement. So if you have, let's just say, a threat on your page that's performing a redirect, it's obviously a bad user experience for you as the publisher, but also as a legitimate advertiser as part of that system who wasn't actually participating in that redirect or putting that threat on your page. They're suffering because of that as well. And so there's just, the entire ecosystem gets hurt by these things.
Right. Yeah. It's not just one person's problem. It's not just a publisher's problem. It's everybody's.
Yep.
Right. So I'd love to chat through how you see threats to publishers evolving this year. And I guess for both of you, Mo, maybe you go first. What is AI's role in ad fraud?
Well, it's one of those things where it was always part of detection, and Geoff is going to be the best person to sort of speak to that in terms of a cat and mouse game, right? And building models and testing them out and deploying them, quickly enough to essentially catch bad actors. And now I think generative AI has really democratized the technology for bad actors in a way. So, OpenAI published a report like last week of 7 nation state operations that were trying to use OpenAI's ChatGPT tools to, essentially, hack our society and things that are going on. And then separately, there's it, and Facebook also uncovered like Doppelganger, which were these sort of spoofed news websites that were, intended to look like real news outlets and were sort of state funded by nefarious state actors. And so I think that kind of thing is something that was really manual and would have taken a lot of time to sort of set up all of the individual pieces. And now I think the technology is a lot more scaled and a lot more available. And, OpenAI, for instance, isn't the only one out there, right? And they're maybe one of the best funded, but that means that there are probably several less funded who are less able to sort of police these state actors. So I think that's probably going to shape quite a bit of how the landscape changes this year.
Right. Mo, I just want to say you look like an angel shining a light onto the wrongs of AI and ad fraud right now.
A tiny bit this way.
Oh, there you go. I mean, it was a great lighting effect. Shout out to the sun. Geoff, what do you think is AI's role in ad fraud?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely kind of dig in and echo some of the stuff that Mo said. I think about it in kind of two main categories. One is as Mo pointed out, the ad fraud in general, whether it's Malvertising or IVT, is really a red team versus black team event where, we as human who provide protections against these things are doing our best to put those protections into place. The bad actors are doing the exact opposite. They're looking at our code and trying to find loopholes, trying to find ways to exploit anything that's out there, whether it's, a vulnerability in a browser, vulnerability in our approach to defending it, or anything else. Obviously, just like AI adds efficiencies to that for other industries, it adds efficiency to this race in and of itself. So, the bad actors are going to be using it. And so as protectors, we also need to be leveraging the same technology to hopefully level the playing field or even get ahead. The second kind of bucket that I see AI really falling into is helping with scale. One kind of way that I think about, and probably a lot of people don't really realize, is like Malvertising and a lot of these bad actors are basically just performance marketers. And the same things that are beneficial from AI to performance marketers, meaning like the ability to create a number of different split tests, the ability to optimize content, to scale content, to basically create the perfect landing page. These are all things that are great for normal marketers. They're also really good for people that want to run a scam. And so, I think that they're going to be able to leverage all of these things to make their malicious ads better, to make their malicious landing pages more convincing, use deep fakes to do the same thing. And that's what we're going to be seeing. And that's the fight. I think that the general, the weapons are going to be improved, but the general scheme is going to be the same.
Right. That seems to be the trend I'm seeing with all the conversations I've had around AI and fraud in general, is that as helpful as it is for us, people who aren't doing nefarious activities, it is just as helpful, if not even more, to fraudsters and cyber criminals. So that seems like par for the course of what people have been saying. Geoff, how do you see AI impacting malvertising schemes specifically?
I think, a lot of them were kind of pointed out just now, but I think that really the key there is a lot of the content. So today, and specifically the malicious landing pages, I think today, that's becoming more and more prevalent, as a lot of the protections that are in place are pretty good at stopping kind of like code-based threats. So I think that that's really going to be something that bad actors are going to be leveraging to improve those. And specifically in that realm is all kinds of synthetic content, synthetic media. So, I think that that's everywhere from deep fakes, deep spoofs, all of these types of things. We're already seeing it. I mean, this is already in play right now. But the level of efficacy of it, I think, is going to be going up.
Right. So Mo, similarly, do you see AI making bad ads easier to implement?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's, from my perspective, we were equipped with, there were really good tools out there to do things that we would call the bucket of creative scanning, essentially, right? Of, we can look through every creative asset and we can sort of understand, here are the trademarks inside of it. Here are the topics that are being spoken about. Here are the likenesses that are being used, or the images that have been licensed. And now, because it's so easy for generative AI to sort of change that formula really quickly, and make something that looks just a little bit different from the original, I think it will be easier to evade a lot of those detection mechanisms. And I think that's going to be a real challenge for everybody in the space to really understand. I think deep spoofs will become a bigger thing than they are right now. Right now it's can they make our likeness, right? But what happens when it's easy to spoof Wells Fargo, for instance, as an example, or a major bank, and their trademarks? I think that's a little bit scarier to me, maybe.
Yeah, I would agree. Are there any other emerging technologies we can expect fraudsters to use in 2024? I mean, this is for both of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're already seeing it. One would obviously be cryptocurrency, and just the ability for, the ability to hide within that, and the ability to have more untraceable transactions. So, as users, as people are getting taken advantage of, it becomes much harder and harder to recover from those, as we have these untraceable methods. I mean, I think that the other area is essentially just the surface area. I think with the growth of Internet of Things, the growth of CTV in-game, the actual devices in people's homes, we already see on the IVT side and on the bot side that these devices are being leveraged to facilitate large-scale attacks. I think as we become more dependent and put more of these things in our environment, whether it's our home, our work, or whatever, we're just opening up the landscape and the availability of things for bad actors to leverage to do these attacks. So I think those are probably two of the other main pieces.
Yeah. Geoff, can you explain what Internet of Things is for anyone who's watching and may not know?
Sure. Internet of Things would basically just be a connected device. So it'd be like your cable box, your Alexa, A lot of things are connected. Your watch, your refrigerator, and that's really the trend that we see. Even things that weren't connected 10 years ago, like everything needs to be connected now, which is great, because then maybe you can control your microwave with your watch. But then guess what? Now your microwave can be attacked and then used to do a full-scale bot attack. And so, from a security perspective, you're just opening up more available resources for somebody that wants to leverage them for an attack. And you have to basically trust that all of these different things have the appropriate protections in place to prevent them from being taken over. Before it would just be like, hey, do I have like good virus protection on my computer? And, you'd probably be safe. Now it's like, does my microwave have, is it impenetrable microwave or not?
Yeah.
Or is Mo's Roomba going to get taken over and then, run a bot attack? These are things that we need to be concerned about.
Yeah, that is crazy. It really reminds me of a Smart House, the Disney Channel original movie. I'm not sure if you're aware, but can't believe we're living in a world where our fridge could maybe launch something nefarious.
Yeah.
Mo, sorry, your take now. What are some other emerging technologies we could expect fraudsters to use in 2024?
Yeah, I think they'll definitely take advantage of data deprecation as one thing as well. I think that our understanding of individual IP addresses, of user agents, of even just known users through cookies, right? That was just a way of also knowing someone rather than exploiting all the information about them. It had a flip side use case, and I know human was never really dependent on a lot of these technologies either, but a lot of cybersecurity vendors were, and a lot of things were running, for instance, on CAPTCHA as an example, and I think AIs can easily solve those things, and so I think there's a void that's being created a little bit that's definitely bound to be exploited. I also think that in an election year, we're going to see a lot of sort of both like foreign influence, but also just dark money in general, kind of going into the foray with kind of voiceovers and things that sound real but aren't real. And I think like there's going to be a little bit of pushing the envelope of what is allowed and acceptable and sort of meets acceptable terms. And so I think we're going to get to see if SSPs and DSPs are really prepared to respond to that and sort of shut down anyone who really pushes beyond what's acceptable there for what's truthful in democracy or in an open society, right? So
yeah, I mean, we could have a whole other one of these about just the election.
Yeah.
We might have to in a couple of months. But thank you. So what are some other threats publishers should be aware of this year? In addition, I guess, to what you guys have already talked about.
I mean, I think that most of the main points was probably covered. I would say that the data privacy regulations and that trend is something that I can also probably add some additional context to. I think that there's been a lot of talk about the cookieless impact and the deprecation of that. I mean, while that in particular might not have as large of an effect on things like IVT detection, I think that it's indicative of a larger trend that we should be cognizant of from a security perspective. I think a lot of the stuff that consumers see is really about protecting the consumer. And, this is the messaging from Google's and Apple's and all of that. The impact, from a security perspective is just like a lessening of the lens that we have and the accuracy of that lens over time. So, cookie might be the thing that we're focused on in 2024, but it's indicative of slowly taking away pieces of that allow us to basically identify bad actors. And so, not only when you're taking away tools that are leveraged to identify people in general, it's perceived as a good thing, but also it makes it very hard to differentiate the difference between a good person and a bad person, or a good person and a bot, because they have a lot more ability to hide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's time to get into the third-party cookie deprecation piece of this, because of course, we can't have this conversation about advertising and malvertising publishers without talking about it. So I guess, Mo, what How does third-party cookie deprecation impact publishers' abilities to detect bad ads?
I don't think it's going to impact that side of it as much. It's going to impact them, I think, a lot more, for things like measurement and things like, essentially proving out their value and being able to segment users and all the things that, essentially were more removed from them. They're now being asked to kind of take on a lot more of that function in-house, right? Curating that first party data, measurement, all of those things, I think, are going to be the big sort of things and are going to be the big sort of challenges for them, and doing it in an environment where there aren't all of the available mechanisms that we've had in the past to measure it, I think are going to make it more challenging. But in terms of bad ads, it's really I think there's a lot more things that you can do to combat it with, even in the absence of cookies. So that's promising.
That's nice. We like a little positive note here. We needed to get there eventually. Geoff, in addition to what you've already said, do you see this shift impacting fraudsters?
I think there's kind of like two sides of the coin. Again, like as I talked about earlier, a lot of these fraudsters are also performance marketers, so they're also not going to be getting as much feedback without the cookies and without a lot of the same measurement that Mo was just talking about. So that could be a negative for them. But as I said, it's indicative of a trend where they're just going to have more room to hide if it's harder to track what an ad is doing where. At the end of the day, if you're the one running the bad ad, that's good for you. So, maybe not a large amount of near-term consequences, but probably long-term, it's going to be helpful for the bad actors.
Right. Just something to be cognizant of.
Right.
So we've talked a lot about just like all of the threats to publishers, all the different things that we can anticipate this year in particular. But let's flip the coin now. How can publishers better protect themselves? Mo, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we always talk about, at Forrester about know your customer, right? And I think the safest ad buyer for me as a publisher is one that I know who's transacting with me directly, right? So taking on more of that relationship, being able to transact through direct channels, or even just making sure that they're known buyers, right? I think is sort of the first and most obvious step. But moreover, right, vetting buyers, I think in general as DSPs, right, is a pretty important one. Some DSPs do a really good job of creative scanning, of knowing their buyers, of keeping fraudulent actors and heavy ads out of their platform, and some do nothing at all. And so I think for publishers, it's really a matter of making sure that their marketplace is sort of clean, right? I think that's going to be really important. And so changing that mix of who's allowed, right, who's earned that right to transact programmatically, I think is going to be probably a pretty big step for them, to be able to clean it up.
Right. Geoff, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that Mo covered some of the key points. I definitely agree with the vetting of your advertisers and your advertising partners. I think that as a publisher, you should be able to ask the questions of how these things are being protected. At the end of the day, we offer services to both publishers and platforms. And, if everything worked perfectly, then there probably would be no need to have bad ads on publishers at the end of the day. So as Mo said, vetting upstream partners and understanding asking the question, what are you doing to solve for this? What are you doing to protect me as your client? I think as we look at this ecosystem as a whole, I think it's very advertiser focused. Obviously, that's where the money starts, and it trickles down to the publishers. So a lot of the protections that are put into place, a lot of the processes that are used by, whether it's an SP or DSP, are advertiser focused, are ensuring that the spend goes somewhere that makes sense and it's not shown in a fraudulent way. I think that publishers have to continue to advocate for themselves and make sure that the ads that do end up on their page are really good ones that are not full of threats or anything else. I would also just say what does that look like in terms of advocating? I think that we have a number of industry organizations, a lot of them that are, again, advertiser focused, but publishers do participate. Things like IAB and the standards that are put into place, things like ads.txt and sellers JSON. I think even if we look at those two, we see that there's been a probably a much wider adoption of ads.txt, aka the publisher checks versus sellers JSON, and being, putting the intermediaries and the advertisers in the spotlight. So just continuing to have that conversation, speaking up as publishers. And I mean, I think the other thing about publishers versus advertisers is that they have to be united and work together to present a front that basically can combat the interests of advertisers. But obviously, I think it's also in everyone's best interest that this entire ecosystem works together and works efficiently and is a safe place to transact. So continuing to just be in the conversation.
Yeah, I would also just add even that I think there's not enough said about what maybe making a good ad entails, right? Of making sure it's light, it's performant, it's clear, it's transparent. All of those things I think have not really been strong values from kind of permeating out of the out of the buy side rather. So I feel like that's one where we want to see I think advertisers doing more of that, and then that creates a better user experience, I think, as well, right? For all of us, and when we're kind of browsing publisher pages and stuff. So I think good ads are a pretty important part of the conversation too, and just identifying them. I know some DSPs and other entities in the programmatic chain are working to kind of eradicate price floors, so that there's always maybe a good buyer available, even if there's a higher bid from maybe a not good quality buyer.
I see. Yeah. And you guys kind of touched on this, but is there anything else you want to add as far as how other people in the programmatic ecosystem can help publishers? Anything else there?
I think that there's a number of kind of knowledge sharing efforts that go on in the space. I think continuing to participate in them, especially those that are upstream, DSPs, SSPs, is important, because I think that one of the tenets at Human is collective protection, and basically working together to fight these things. I think the more information, the more people we have participating in it, the better we can get as a whole. So that'd probably be my only other thing.
Right. Mo, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think definitely, bringing DSPs into it and making them a part of the conversation, but also, I think brands and their CISOs are pretty disconnected from what's actually happening out in the programmatic space. It's a few layers removed, right? Because I have maybe an agency and then a DSP, and then they have an IVT vendor handling it, right? And so I think that they aren't necessarily thinking about maybe all of the things that, a DSP could be allowing to sort of proliferate, in a sense, if they're not doing creative scanning. And so the way we're kind of talking about it at Forrester is that every dollar that you spend as a buyer is either tightening or loosening the security environment. So make sure that you're spending with that DSP who's tightening it, and make sure everyone they're buying from is also tightening that security environment. And so I think that's really, when I think of collective protection that Geoff was mentioning, that's really how we feel the rubber hits the road.
Right. Well, this was really excellent. Do you guys have anything else you want to add before we close out here? Anything that we didn't touch that you feel like we need to talk about? Or have we covered it all?
Sure, we haven't covered it all, but I think we've covered a good amount. And
you mean we didn't cover every single threat to publishers? And just
as long as I say Temu one time, then someone got bingo somewhere. So I think let's just do that.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Good measure.
The number of ads that they had. I mean, there's a difference between bad ads and good ads when it comes to creative. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah,
that's a good point. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me on this. If anyone has any questions, please pop them into the comments. We will come back, look at them, and make sure they get answered. But thank you so much, Mo and Geoff, for joining, for offering your insights, and for another great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you both. This was a great time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.